Hi, I just want to welcome everyone to our live web chat with Dr. Tovah Klein. I'm Jessica from Baby Chat TV, and I will be moderating this chat. We have a whole bunch of questions from a bunch of women that have submitted these to us. Just to give you a little background on Dr. Klein, if you don't know about her too well, she's worked with toddlers for over 30 years. She is a mother of three, so knows everything about them. She is the director of the Barnard College Toddler Center and the author of, very long title here, How Toddlers Thrive, What Parents Can Do Today for Children Ages 2 to 5 to Plant the Seeds of Lifelong Success. First off, I just wanted to ask you a question. What is it like working with toddlers all day long? Because I cannot even imagine.
I know this is a question that people often ask. You know, for me, it's an exciting thing to do. And I have to say, it's not all day long, but we do have toddlers here at some point, 5 days a week. And for many years, I went from my work with toddlers to home with toddlers, which can be a challenge for any parents who are listening, who are doing work with people, and then going home to toddlers is hard. But I just find it that toddlers are filled with curiosity and ideas, and they communicate in a way that's so different than how we communicate. So I see a lot of joy in it, and I see, you know, children who want to be understood, but they live in a very different world than we do. You know, we always think of ourselves as, you know, toddlers are like us, and they are in some way, but they're so different from us. And so I really get a lot of pleasure out of observing their world and asking that question all the time: what is this toddler doing and why? So that's sort of the short answer about their curiosity and their, you know, rapid development. Right? Every day is different with toddlers.
Okay, great. I'm sure it is. And I commend you for that. I'm just going to get right into the questions that our viewers have submitted then. Our first one is from Carrie. She would like to know the best way to manage tantrums, especially when they seem to not really know what they want and just keep saying no and seem to keep getting really frustrating and continuing to cry.
You know, this is like the $1 million toddler question. These are tough years, you know, starting around 18 months when toddlers just get up on their feet or their new walkers. You know, even if your child's been walking for 6 or 8 months, the world is really new to them, right? Their language is growing rapidly. Physically, they're changing every single day. They're absorbing what they see, what they hear, all of it, right? And their brains don't know how to handle all these new emotions. So if you think about an infant's in our arms a lot of the time, and we learn how to comfort them, we learn their signals, we take care of them. The toddler's trying to figure out how to be on their own, and there's so much they want to communicate that they can't. Maybe they don't have the language. Usually they don't have the language. Emotions are new to them, right? Anger and frustration are the key emotions of the toddler, period. And what happens is they get flooded, they get overwhelmed. So if you know those triggers for your child, now sometimes we do and sometimes we don't as parents, but if you know what those triggers are, like missing a nap, or some children get overwhelmed being in places where there's a lot of people, a party might be too hard for them. You know, the best way to handle a tantrum is to do your best to avoid having them happen. But toddlers tantrum, right? They don't know how to communicate. They can't negotiate the way we negotiate. And so what happens really is, literally, if you think about their brains, they don't have the capacity to handle these emotions, and they don't understand their emotions. So it's like a double whammy. The best you can do, I always see it as a switch. You know, the child's kind of going up, 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 and then a switch has gone off, and now they're in that tantrum. The best you can do at that point is not negotiate, not try to be rational, not yell at them, but is to sit by them. So if you're in a public place, for example, we've all been there. I've certainly been there with one of my own toddlers tantruming, playgrounds, public places. Sometimes you have to leave. Sometimes you have to get out of a grocery store, and that's okay. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with your child. It means that this situation isn't working right now. So sometimes getting your child out of a situation or into a quieter room in the house. And for other kids, it's really a matter of saying, I'm here, I get how upset you are, I'm right here. and waiting for it to pass. You can't negotiate or cajole a child out of that state because literally they've kind of lost their ability to connect at that point. The most important part of a tantrum, believe it or not, is the reunion afterwards. So when your child has been that upset that they've really melted down, and I really see it as a meltdown, it's like all is lost for them at that moment. It's when they come out of it, they're actually frightened. They feel like, uh-oh, either they feel like I was so bad, do these people still love me? But also it's scary to feel that upset, that angry. And so the most important piece is to come back together with them. Give them a hug. Some kids don't want a hug right away, but to comfort them and to say, well, you were so frustrated, but I still love you. Come on, let's do something else. You don't want to keep harping on whatever it is that upset them. But to know that this is a phase of development, and the more we try to understand them and we label their emotions, the more development moves forward. So they can be long phases, but eventually children get better at it.
Okay, great. The next one is another one from Carrie. Mm-hmm. And what is the best way to manage a strong attachment to mommy and only wanting mommy to hold her or carry her? I'm sure a common one.
This is a really common one. So young children who are in a family with two parents, it's not that they don't love both parents, right? Some children prefer mommy, some children prefer daddy, but it's really about power, right? So just as they're trying to figure out who am I and where do I fit in the world, they're also realizing, hey, I have choices and I have some power. And so they'll go through periods, and again, they can be long periods or they can be up and down, where they only want one parent. And the best thing to do is to be a team with your spouse. If there are two of you, the child really feels safest when they feel like the adults are in charge. So, I'll give a scenario that Carrie might have dealt with where, the child says, no, only mommy can put on my coat. If it's a time that mommy can, then she says, oh, sure, I can put that on for you. Daddy loves you, even though you really need mommy. And daddy says the same thing. That's fine. You need mommy to put your coat on. So that the child sees that this is a team. And then they switch. They become a daddy. Only daddy can do. And it goes back and forth. But it's really their way of saying, hey, I'm independent. I'm going to choose. So the less you make of it and the more you act as an adult team, and the lighter you can be about it, have some humor, the more the child feels like, okay, I'm being held by these people, held in an emotional way.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, to move on. Our next question is from Kim. She said, my 2-year-old daughter will be starting school for the first time in September, and I'm a bit worried about how separation will go since she is a shy, attached, and somewhat clingy child. Any tips for making the transition smoother or how to prepare for this summer?
Yeah, good question. There's probably a lot of people listening who have children 2 or 3 starting school in the fall. So a couple of things to think about. One is to not really say anything about it now, right? As the parent, Kim might be feeling nervous, a little anxious about it, but the fall is a long time off for a toddler, right? It's months and months away, and a lot's going to happen and a lot's going to develop. That child's going to develop that much more. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that, maybe a week before school, she says something. You can show her the school, if it's a place that has a little playground, she could go play there, just to say, oh, this is a place we play, so that when she goes there, she knows it. But really the important piece about separating, particularly for 2-year-olds, is that you take it slowly and at their pace. So every child is different. I see this at our center. We have 50 children each year. They don't all come at the same time, but 50 across our classes. And every child starts off differently, right? There's the kids who come in like raring to go. There are the children who need to observe and take their time and warm up. And so if she's that kind of child who needs a slow and steady warm up, then make sure that the program that she's going to can respect that. So initially go for a short amount of time, mommy or daddy stays, and then over time, as Kim builds trust with the program and the teachers, that's really what the toddler picks up on. But expect regression. When children start school, even if they went last year, right? It's like starting over again, and it might be new teachers and a new classroom. There's almost always some regression somewhere. So that means A child can be clingier. They might start waking up at night. They might just, be a little bit more sensitive and melt down sooner. That's because separating is a big deal, and it's establishing new relationships, and it's really gaining the trust that mommy or daddy will be back. And that's what you're giving them, is this trust.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is from Evelyn. My son is 2.5, 2.5, I don't know, I said 2.5, and he's still in diapers, but often stands up to pee and poo, so it is hard to tell when he's ready to go. Then he denies having even gone and resists diaper changes. He fully understands going potty on the toilet and even helps me flush and does not seem afraid of the toilet at all. Preschool starts this fall and he must be toilet trained. Are there any techniques I should try? He's not interested in rewards, when it comes to potty training.
Right. Potty training is, everything in the toddler years, let me give it this preface, everything in the toddler years practically is a step towards independence. And every time your baby becomes a little bit more independent, they also sort of retreat back to, wait, I still want to be your baby. That's the push-pull of the toddler years. I want to be big, but I also want to know that I'm your baby forever. Potty training is a big deal because for their whole life, they've been able to go in diapers. So even if they're capable physically of using the toilet, it's actually a little anxiety provoking. And for some children, it's very anxiety provoking to make this big step. And I always say to parents, your child knows you want this. They know that it's going to be a gift to you. And the fact that any of our kids ever get toilet trained, which they all do eventually, is really a gift to the parents. So the first thing is, it is worrisome, I know, for parents when the school says your child has to be toilet trained by school. I would find out if the child could actually wear pull-ups at school, just so to take the pressure off of mom. Because when you feel under that pressure, your child's going to feel under it. And then in the summer, depending on where she lives, summer is slowly arriving, at least in New York. Summertime is an easier time in general to toilet train because children have less clothes on. But the main thing is to not pressure your child, to really say to him, hey, there's a potty here, and when you want to use it, you can use it, and to not overly make a big deal when he actually goes. Because what happens is we all want to cheer for our children when they actually use the potty. That's what we want them to do. But when you really cheer them on, they start to think, uh-oh, and what if I don't do that? And that's where the anxiety comes from. So if she could pick a week, I have something actually about this in my book, and I'm sure that she's probably talked to people about how to do it. But usually what I say, pick a week that you don't mind having accidents. You don't have a lot going on. And you put him in underwear and you say to him, here's the potty, and you take him, every hour, hour and a half. But if he pushes back and says, no, 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 then the parent has to back off, because you can't win this control battle. Right? Only the child can actually be the one to say, hey, I'm going to do it now. So the less pressure, the better.
Okay. All very interesting to me. The next question is from Danielle. She said, what is a nice and toddler-friendly way to help them understand they can't always get what they want? When a firm no or a simple explanation doesn't work, are there any other suggestions you might have for dealing with this? Heading off tantrums and helping them understand?
This is actually a great question. This is really our role as parents, I think, throughout our whole life, is how do I help my child through the hard parts of life, the disappointments, when they can't get what they want, when their friend won't play with them, right? Children know how to make themselves happy. It's not our job to make them happy. It's our job to do exactly what Danielle is asking, which is, how do I help my child deal with disappointment, which happens every day in life? So I'm going to give kind of a counterintuitive response to that. The way that we can really help young children is by being empathic with them. Right? You don't want to spend the whole day saying no, 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 because your child's already doing that. Right? As they become independent, they're already saying no. The way to really help them through those moments is to be empathic. So to use some language like, oh, I wish I could let you, have cookies before dinner, or I wish we could go to the park right now, but it's dark outside. So when you say something like that to your child, it says, I recognize what you want or what you're asking, but it can't happen. And that kind of language actually makes toddlers really feel very understood and feel better and goes a long way. So a lot of it is empathizing. We tend to say things like, of course we can't go outside, it's dark, it's bedtime, which is a very rational kind of way of talking. And it makes sense for adults, but young children aren't rational. They live in the very moment with the very idea or thought or desire that they have. And if the desire is, hey, I want to watch TV now, even though it's bedtime, then that's what they put out there. So using some kind of a sort of an approach that recognizes their need and says, oh yeah, I know you want to watch TV, that would be fun, but it's bedtime. Keep saying to them, I hear you, but there's some routine that we're following. The other way to do it is to think about what routines she has at home, because the more routines you have around things that you're going to do every day, bedtime, getting dressed, getting out the door, any of those things that you do in kind of a ritual way every day helps fend off some of these points that young children will say, hey, I want to do something different. So to think about routines as well.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Elizabeth. She says, our son is 21 months and has recently started actively asserting his will when told not to do something, for example, climb, touch something. We tell him no, but it seems to have no effect other than sometimes spurring him into further forbidden activities. How can we start to discipline him? Is a timeout spot in our home something we should establish? Reasoning with him gets us nowhere.
Yes. Well, it's good she knows that, because the toddler's little brain does not have the capacity to reason. So it goes back to that point that I was just saying. They have a thought or a feeling or an idea, and they live right in the moment. They want to go with it right away. And so as the parent, the way to really help a child is to think of it as a longer term sort of commitment rather than a moment to, if it's a moment to moment, then you're going to be saying no all the time, and your child's going to feel terrible. They're going to feel like, I have this idea and it's never right or it's never good. And they're going to keep pushing back. They're just trying to figure out what it means to be their own person and what it means to be independent and what it means to have ideas and choices. So the way to really think about this is limit setting. So rather than punishment, which makes really no sense at this age because your child doesn't even, know what comes next, let alone what a punishment means, is to really think about where the limits are, and also to have a lot of humor and fun during this age period, because they're basically on a crash course of discovery. And every parent I know says, I want my child to, love learning and be creative and feel good about themselves. But when we constantly come back at them with no, 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 they start to feel like, what's wrong with me? So when you have limits, so the limit can be like, oh, I can't let you climb on the couch, but you can climb on this step stool. You can almost always come up with an alternative for a child. They're banging on something that they really can't bang on. Let's say, the window. You can't bang on something glass. You say, oh, you want to bang? Here, you can bang on this drum, this toy drum. It keeps saying to them, I see what you need, and I'm going to give you a place to do it. So you're joining them, and you're giving them a place for it. And that's what socializes them over time. And so for parents to really think about, this is a long-term project and development is slow. And so what she can be doing is kind of joining with him, but then moving it somewhere else. And then when it's a safety issue, like, they're climbing up to the counter and there's knives, there's something you really have to say to them, this isn't safe, and you remove them from that situation, but you save it for when you really need it, like crossing the street, something dangerous or sharp.
You make it all seem so easy.
Yeah, I wish it was. It was never that easy in my house.
I'm going to combine two viewers' questions. This is another one from Elizabeth and another one from Leighton, since they're both related to picky eaters. The first one is, We're having trouble getting our son to eat, particularly at dinner time when he refuses food and only accepts milk. And your thoughts on this? And then Leighton's, her son is actually 5, and they just had assumed that he would grow out of his picky eating habits, but he's still very selective on his choices, and she doesn't really want to have to prepare a second meal for just him every night. Is 5 too late to break this habit?
No, the simple answer is like, no, 5 is not too late. So here's the issue with food. You know, if you think about toddlers and this desire to be independent and to be their own person, they're going to look for control in the few places they can have it. And so that's around toileting, getting dressed, food for sure. You know, there's a few places that really you can't force a kid to eat. So food can become a control battle. So the first question I always ask parents, and these parents would know, is, you know, is your pediatrician concerned about your child's nutrition? And as long as your pediatrician's not concerned, then really the best way to get out of kind of control battles around food is to make sure that you have these routines around mealtime. So that you're, you know, for the 3 meals of the day, not the snacks, but the 3 meals of the day, that you have some pretty steady routine, a table that you eat at, that you sit around together, that some adult is eating with the child. You know, parents often tell me they don't eat with their children because they eat later. That's fine, but some adult should be sitting there eating or eating something and chatting with the children and not noticing what the children are eating, right? So the control parents have is what they bring into the house, what they serve. The control the children have is deciding what on their plate they're going to actually eat, and it may not be what the parent hopes they'll eat. So really, the less you notice of their food and their intake, and the less focus you put on food, the more likely they are to eat. And also, you're socializing them. Again, you know, this is how we do dinner. We sit around, we talk about the day. You know, some families like to tell stories. So something that really says to the child, the eating is about you, not about us. Now, for a 5-year-old, this is true at any age. Children have various palates that are pretty somewhat inborn, right? Some kids are very adventurous eaters. Some kids like spicy, some like salty. But there are some children who really have a very limited palate of what they'll eat. So depending on how serious that 5-year-old's problem is, what I would say is to make sure she's serving something every night or every meal that you know the child's going to like. For a lot of kids, that's carbohydrates, you know, rice, pasta, bread, that you're serving something that they like and that there's other things being served as well. And that way, again, they have options, and the more you back off of food, the more likely, again, they are to eat. What I find with the older children is sometimes, particularly if they had a weight gain problem, that the parent was worried, or maybe the child was sick at some point, there tends to be a lot of focus on food. And culturally, some cultures focus a lot on food. And so if there's a lot of talking about food in the house, and the parents are talking about it, and the grandparents are asking about it, the child starts to feel like, 1, they feel badly about themselves, but 2, they feel like, oh, I have to really hunker down and have my control here. So I would start by saying the less focus on it, the better. And no, she doesn't need to make something else for him. She can serve their dinner. She can put, you know, different foods on the table. You know, for my kids, for years, we still do this with teenagers. We always put food in the middle of the table. You know, that could be cut up vegetables, cheese, olives, whatever goes there. And that gives children then even a bigger choice. Children like choices, but this is what's for dinner.
Okay, great. Okay, this one's a little bit long, so bear with me here. My son, God love him. Oh, this is actually from Amy, one of our baby chat hosts. My son, God love him, wakes up in the middle of the night sometimes, multiple times a night. He's always been difficult to put to bed, and he can always nap easily. And at night, he can take up to an hour, sometimes even longer, to fall asleep. Sometimes he'll wake up at midnight and then at 4 a.m., and this can actually happen quite frequently. We have tried the cry it out method, where he'll scream and cry for up to 90 minutes, bringing him into our room with a sound machine, special lights, special blankets. We have set a bedtime routine. If the weather's nice, we try to spend a lot of time outside running and burning up his energy. We try naps, putting him to bed earlier, putting him to bed later, rocking him, soothing him. pretty much we've tried everything. Do you have any suggestions for us?
Do you know how old this child is?
That's a great question. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm just wondering if he's in a crib. You don't know.
Oh wait, you know what? He is in a crib. It says, I actually kind of paraphrase this question to get through it,
Right.
but it says he will throw himself down, bang his head, squeeze against the farthest corner of his crib, refusing.
Right, to go to sleep. Sleep is a big issue. Again, this is an area of control because obviously we can't force another human being to sleep, particularly a toddler. But I think more important than that, sleep at night, because he naps fine, sleep is about separation. It is the biggest separation of the day. So, parents will often say to me, but I go to work every day, or she goes to school every day, right? I say goodbye every day. But the nighttime is a big separation because it's at the end of the day, they've got their least resources, they're worn out from the day, and they have to say good night, but which is really goodbye. It's dark, right? You're usually in a room alone. So it's a big emotional moment for a young child. So without knowing this parent or her background or anything, a couple of things that I would say to try is to really think of it as separation. But to also know that the shorter that bedtime routine is initially, the better off you are. So hopefully every parent listening has some kind of bedtime routine. You want, routine, the bath, the books, a slowly, gradual routine. But if it gets stretched out for a child who really has trouble separating at night, they get more and more anxious, right? Because they're realizing, that inevitable thing where I have to say goodnight is coming. So to try to shorten it is one. Two is, if you think about it as separation, then you see it as, I'm saying goodbye to my child, or that's at least how your child feels. So giving them something to sleep with that comes from you. So that can be a little family photo, that the child can have with them, but also it can be a piece of mommy or daddy. So, a t-shirt or a handkerchief or something soft from the parent. You see, this is mommy's, and you can have it all night. It'll be right here with you. And then I think actually one of the most important pieces is that she remind her child that when she's going to see him again. Because if this is separation, then the question is, when's the reunion? And so to say, I'm going to put you to sleep and I'm going to see you in the morning because I always do. Mommy and daddy are always here in the morning. Or if it's only one parent, to name the parent, so that the child sees that there's a reunion. And then the same thing in the morning to really say to the child, I came back just like I always do. So it's a different way than we love to sleep, or we imagine that we're going to get, that sleep. But for a toddler, it really is a battle of, I don't want to say goodbye to you.
Okay. I'm actually going to continue with the sleep question. We had one of our viewers, Chris, ask about, since our daughter was a baby, she was never sleep trained. We've always had a lax schedule with sleep. Our baby she would sleep till about 8:30 a.m. As my wife is a stay-at-home mom, she doesn't wind up going to bed till after about 10:30 p.m. She's starting preschool in a few months, so we really want to get her on a normal routine.
Yeah. I'm going to assume that they have some routine already at 10:30 to put her to bed, and that has worked. So really what they can do is start to back that up. So whatever the bedtime routine is, start backing it up, and he's right to be thinking about it now. So they could even, say, they could come up with a schedule for themselves and do it week by week. This week we're going to put her to bed a half hour earlier, and then next week a half hour earlier, until they've backed it up. And it sounds like she's a good sleeper already if she's sleeping 10 hours a night. So they can keep gradually backing that up. Then by the time she starts school, probably in September, she'll be on a better schedule. But he's right that now would be the time to start.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to do another one actually from Amy again. Landry, her son, who I found out is 2.5,
okay.
Stays at home with me, and has lots of play dates and activities during the day. He is a sweet, happy, energetic boy who's always gotten along well with other children. When I go to the gym, he goes to the kids club there. Recently, a boy his age has started to roughhouse with him and even bit him. I found out that Landry had bit the little boy after the other child would not give him his toy back. This isn't behavior we see at home or anywhere else. I know this is a natural stage for kids to go through, and he also has speech issues that leave him frustrated when he can't get his point across. How do I teach him biting is not allowed if this is happening when I'm not there and he's being provoked by another child?
Yeah. That's a tough question. Toddlers, particularly 2-year-olds, bite not because it seems like a terrible thing like we think, but because they're communicating. They're usually communicating frustration. Although for other parents listening, they're often communicating excitement, right? So some children bite out of sheer joy and excitement, but often it's a communication of frustration or anger, which it sounds like is in this case. I would be a little bit wary of leaving him in a drop-off like that where you don't really know who the caregivers are. It's not a place where he has a relationship with people, with adults, and you don't know what their kind of skill is at handling these situations. So, one fix would be for her to come up with something else to do with him while she's I guess she's at the gym or something. Is that?
Yes.
So to either have, babysitter at home or to switch off with another parent or something to watch him, because he's not doing it in other places. He's feeling threatened there. And, as lovely as the people might be who are taking care of him, they may not really know how to handle toddlers and toddler conflict. Conflict is the first stage of social interaction for toddlers. So I would suggest not using that drop off right now. Another 6 months or a year, he might be okay with it. But rather than having him feel like he's a bad boy for having these feelings that he can't convey, I would put him in that situation right now. One way is to be clear on him and encourage to give him something to bite. There are some kids, when their language isn't quite there, who have these incredible urges. It's like, we also do it, if you grind your teeth or you just clench. And they're so impulsive at this age that they can't stop. They're not bad people. So if it continues, you can give him something to bite, a stuffed animal or something to say, bite this, but I can't let you bite. But again, our instinct as adults, of course, is to say like, no, that's a horrible thing. But from his point of view, it's an impulse in response to frustration and anger.
Okay, great, thanks. Our next one is from Allison. She said, my daughter is slightly over 2.5. The bottle still soothes her. She needs it to fall asleep, and we do give it to her as a special treat in the morning sometimes to relax. We never allow her to have it in public. Is this okay for her age? If so, or if not, what can we do to break this habit?
So let me just say that she has it in the morning and she has it.
She sometimes has it in the morning and then has it every night to fall asleep.
Look, I'm not a dentist. The dentists don't like that, just so his mom knows. But there's really nothing wrong with having certainly other countries and cultures where kids bottles much longer here. So if you have a child who's developing well, eating, regular meals, developing, if that's her comfort, I can't see that there's anything wrong with it. I know that some of the medical people don't agree. The only thing I would say is ask her dentist, because the dentists worry about the milk sitting on the teeth because I think it can cause tooth decay. But other than that, there's nothing wrong with having 2 bottles a day if she's developing otherwise.
Okay, great. Our next question is from, her name is Ya. I really like what I know about the approach of the Barnard program that you run. For families that don't have access to your school but want to provide their toddlers with a similar experience when deciding on a threes program, what are the important aspects of the school to consider and what are the right questions to have answered? Based on marketing materials put out by schools, it's really difficult to tell differences between how each program is different and how the open houses or when the open houses occur, mostly when classes are not in session.
Right.
So it's hard to observe personally.
It's such a good question, and it's also a complex question. You know, there are a couple pieces you can look at. She's right. You have to go to a certain school. No question. You know, materials can be beautiful, websites can be beautiful, words can be beautiful. You have to really go see the program in action. And the thing to look at for young children really is the interaction between the adults caring for the children and the children. So kind of the warmth and the responsiveness and really the kindness of the teachers towards the children. Are there toys or materials at the children's height or accessibility, and do they seem appropriate for the children? But also to ask questions like, another piece, how do the children look when they're there? Are the children, for the most part, engaged and happy? That's one. And two is, how are the teachers responding to a distressed child or an aggressive child or just a child who's having a hard time? That tells you a lot, right? Are they being caring and comforting even in the face of conflict? They can still be respectful, and they should be respectful of the children. But then to look around the room, one of the kind of telltale signs in a classroom is there'll always be some children's art up on the walls. And does this look like something children did, or does it look like something adults do all the children had to do the same thing? And you can see that you can see butterflies on the wall, and all those things. You might even be thinking, 3-year-olds did that, and that there's no sort of divergence. They all look the same. So that's kind of another clue. And then to ask about the routine and look to see what the routine of the day is. It can be fairly simple, but the school should follow a routine and be respectful, of children who say, should ask a question like, sort of in a circle time. Listen to responses. Are they saying that they respect the children may not want to, and that they have a way to have them sort of participate from the outside or sit outside without being disrespected? And it's really about the warmth and the kind of emotional understanding, I think, of the teachers.
Okay, great. Here's another question. This is from an anonymous viewer. What is the best way to help a toddler prepare for a new sibling?
Few quick pieces. This is in my book, but there's also on your website, on Baby Chat TV. If you go to the Baby Chat website, I have a brief video on just this issue. Really, the key is this. Your first child is still a baby. And I think it's hard for anyone to first 2 less than 2 years apart. So those funny things, the less you say, the better. This is for a very young child, a 2 or 3-year-old, even a 4-year-old. But to tell them that, soon mommy's gonna, there's a baby in mommy's belly, and soon mommy and daddy are gonna go, and the baby's gonna come out. You say there's a doctor, there's a midwife who's gonna help the baby come out. But to remind the toddler that he or she is still your baby, and that mommy and daddy are still the whole family. It's very scary for a young child who has no concept of what could possibly be inside mommy's belly to think about what it means to be a big brother or sister. So it's both sort of lightly telling them that a new baby is going to be coming, and at the same time saying, but you're going to still be our baby, and we're going to take care of you. That's really important piece. And if she wants to come to the hospital, that's fine. She feels up to it. Keep that visit. And I always suggest a gift from the new baby to the toddler, say this is your new baby sister or brother, and here's her little present for you, because it says to the toddler, this is all about you, which is how they feel. They feel life is all about them.
Great, thanks. Then I have a clingy and attached toddler, and when mommy is around, no one else can do anything with her. She wants to be held 24/7, which is very frustrating and challenging, especially as she gets heavier.
This is, without knowing this family or the situation, if I was with her, I'd be asking the mom a lot of questions about what else is going on in the house. Just say, what's going on is development change. Sometimes they're learning a new skill. They become much clingier. Is there some change at home, a new work schedule, tension in the house, visitors, whatever? There might be something going on in her life, and that's the first question to ask to try to figure out why she's doing it. If that's not the case, these tend to be phases, right? The child's going through something, you don't always know what it is. And the best mommy can do is be there for her, talk with her, figure out ways to involve her in whatever mommy's doing. And equally, for the parent who's being clung to like that, to take breaks. I think it's really important. When the other parent is home, switch off. The parent, in this case, the mommy, should be able to go out, do things for herself, have access to a sitter, have a sitter come over a little bit more, to take breaks, and be there entertaining. And if the mother's tense to that, the child picks up and clings even more. But I would say the main thing is to try to figure out, hey, what's going on that she's feeling right now, clingy.
Okay, great. That actually was the last of the questions that we have. Is there anything else that you want to say before we wrap up?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think the main thing to say is that in order to really enjoy this toddler stage, you have to switch to see the world through their beautiful eyes, which is always easy to do. If you can do that and see where they're coming from, you get a lot more humor about raising your child. And it becomes much more fun, actually. The enjoyment goes up and the control battles go down. But at this age, you got to really pick your battles and know that they won't forever be this age.
Yeah, just think one day they'll be teenagers. All right, well, thank you so much for doing this with us. And we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Okay, bye.
Thanks again. Bye.